Jesus Christ, walking through the fires of hell, searching for souls to save. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? Yet one woman claims to have seen it with her own eyes. Rose Mahmad's journey from life to death and back again revealed a truth so profound, it has the power to transform your understanding of faith, redemption, and the very nature of existence. April 12th dawned like any other day for Rose Mahmad, but it would soon become a date etched into her memory forever. As an ex-Muslim, Rose had already experienced a profound shift in her spiritual journey, but nothing could have prepared her for the extraordinary events about to unfold. The day began with an unsettling sense of unease. Rose felt a strange heaviness in her chest, an inexplicable fatigue weighing down her limbs. As the hours passed, her discomfort intensified, transforming into an alarming physical distress. Recognizing the severity of her condition, Rose made the decision to rush to the hospital, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and confusion. In the sterile confines of the emergency room, Rose found herself lying on a hospital bed, surrounded by the beeping of monitors and the hushed voices of medical staff. As doctors hurried to diagnose her mysterious illness, Rose felt a chilling realization creep over her. Life was slipping away, trickling through her fingers like grains of sand in an hourglass. As her breathing grew labored and her vision began to blur, Rose's mind became a whirlwind of memories. Joyful moments flashed before her eyes, the laughter of loved ones, cherished milestones, and simple pleasures she had taken for granted. Yet, interwoven with these happy recollections were threads of regret, missed opportunities, unresolved conflicts, and words left unspoken. In those crucial moments, as Rose teetered on the precipice between life and death, a strange and unexpected sensation washed over her. The fear and panic that had gripped her began to recede, replaced by an otherworldly sense of peace. It was as if a gentle hand had reached out, soothing her troubled spirit and calming the storm within. As her breathing slowed and the sounds of the hospital faded into the background, Rose experienced a profound shift in her perception. She felt a gradual detachment from her physical form, as if she were gently rising above her own body. The pain and discomfort that had plagued her moments before melted away, replaced by a lightness she had never known. In this surreal state of being, Rose came to a startling realization. She was no longer bound to her earthly body. The constraints of flesh and bone had fallen away, leaving her essence free to explore realms beyond the physical world. It was a moment of both awe and trepidation, as Rose found herself on the threshold of an unknown journey. As the last tendrils of connection to her mortal form faded, Rose felt herself being drawn towards a vast, mysterious expanse. The familiar surroundings of the hospital room dissolved, giving way to an otherworldly landscape she could never have imagined. With a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, Rose allowed herself to be carried forward, her spirit embarking on an extraordinary odyssey into the unknown. Little did Rose know that this was merely the beginning of a profound spiritual experience that would challenge everything she thought she knew about life, death, and the nature of existence itself. As she ventured into the great beyond, Rose Mahmad was about to confront truths that would shake the very foundations of her beliefs and forever alter her perception of reality. In the blink of an eye, Rose's peaceful transition was shattered by an overwhelming sense of terror. The gentle warmth that had embraced her spirit was rapidly replaced by a searing heat, hinting at horrors beyond imagination. As she drifted further from the familiar world she had left behind, Rose found herself plunging into a vast, oppressive darkness that seemed to stretch on forever. The initial serenity of her otherworldly journey gave way to a growing sense of dread. The darkness around her felt dense and thick, pressing in on her from all sides. It was as if the very fabric of reality was closing in, creating an invisible weight that made it difficult for Rose to breathe. The air became stifling, intensifying her discomfort and adding to the mounting fear that threatened to consume her. As Rose descended deeper into this realm of shadows, she became aware of grotesque figures looming at the edges of her perception. These shadowy entities, barely discernible in the inky blackness, seemed to dance and writhe just beyond her field of vision. Their presence added another layer of horror to her surroundings, as if her deepest fears were manifesting in this nightmarish landscape. The heat that had first enveloped Rose continued to intensify, wrapping around her like a smothering blanket. It grew more unbearable with each passing moment, a stark contrast to the peace she had experienced earlier. This oppressive warmth seemed to penetrate her very being, leaving her with an overwhelming sense of despair and hopelessness. As Rose struggled to make sense of her surroundings, distant sounds began to reach her ears. At first they were faint and indistinct, but they quickly grew clearer and more horrifying. The air filled with cries of anguish and torment, a cacophony of suffering that sent chills through Rose's incorporeal form. These haunting wails seemed to echo from every direction, leaving no doubt about the nature of this terrifying place. In that moment, as the reality of her situation crashed over her like a tidal wave, Rose came to a chilling realization. The oppressive darkness, the searing heat, the looming shadows, and the sounds of endless torment could only mean one thing: she had entered hell. This was not the peaceful afterlife she had imagined, but a realm devoid of mercy, where hope seemed to have been extinguished long ago. The weight of this revelation bore down on Rose, filling her with a deep, overwhelming fear. Everything she had believed about the afterlife, shaped by her former faith and her recent spiritual journey, was now called into question. As she grappled with this horrifying truth, Rose couldn't help but wonder what awaited her in the depths of this infernal realm, and more importantly, was there any hope of escape from this place of eternal torment? As Rose steeled herself for what was to come, she had no way of knowing that her journey through hell was only beginning. The true horrors of this realm were about to reveal themselves, challenging not only her courage, but the very foundations of her understanding about life, death, and the nature of divine justice. As Rose's eyes adjusted to the infernal darkness, a haunting scene materialized before her. What she witnessed next would challenge everything she thought she knew about the sanctity of marriage vows. Could the bonds meant to unite souls in life become instruments of eternal torment in death? The air around Rose grew thick with the acrid scent of scorched metal and despair. Before her, a group of tormented souls appeared, bound together in pairs by burning chains that seemed to glow with an otherworldly intensity. These weren't just any souls, Rose realized with a growing sense of horror. These were the spirits of those who had broken the sacred promises of marriage. Each pair struggled against their fiery bonds, their faces contorted in agony as they tried to break free from one another. But with every attempt to separate, the chains only tightened, burning deeper into their ethereal forms. Rose watched, transfixed, as this gruesome dance of pain and regret played out before her eyes. The cries of the damned filled the air, a cacophony of accusation and remorse. "You betrayed me," one soul wailed, while its partner responded with equal anguish. "I never meant to hurt you." Their words, sharp as knives, seemed to cut through the very fabric of this hellish realm, adding to the palpable atmosphere of suffering. As Rose observed this endless cycle of struggle and punishment, she began to understand the gravity of their transgressions. These souls had not just broken promises made to each other, but had violated a covenant considered sacred by many cultures and religions. Their eternal punishment served as a stark reminder of the weight carried by marriage vows. The scene before her was a twisted mockery of earthly unions. Where once there had been love and commitment, now there was only pain and mutual torment. Rose couldn't help but reflect on the psychological and emotional devastation that often accompanies divorce and betrayal in the world of the living. Here, in this infernal plane, those wounds were made manifest in the most literal and horrifying way. With each passing moment, the full impact of this gruesome fate became clearer to Rose. These souls were not just suffering physical pain, but were trapped in an endless loop of reliving their betrayals. The regret, the accusations, the futile attempts at freedom, all of it spoke to the deep, lasting damage caused by broken vows. As Rose turned away from this harrowing spectacle, her mind reeling from what she had witnessed, she found herself face to face with another group of suffering souls. The horrors of hell, it seemed, were far from over. Each new revelation threatened to shake the foundations of her understanding about life, death, and the consequences of our earthly actions. Rose stood transfixed, watching as souls writhed in agony, engulfed by flames that seemed to originate from their very core. What she was about to learn about these unfortunate spirits would forever change her perception of the destructive power of negative emotions. Could this be the ultimate price of unchecked hatred? As Rose's gaze swept across this new group of tormented souls, she noticed something profoundly disturbing. Unlike the external flames she had witnessed earlier, these fires burned from within the spirits themselves. The souls twisted and contorted, their ethereal forms racked with pain as dark flames licked at their insides. It was a sight that defied logic and challenged Rose's understanding of spiritual suffering. The fire manifested in a truly horrifying manner. Shadowy forms, like clawed creatures made of smoke and ember, tore at the souls from the inside out. These manifestations of inner turmoil seemed to feed on the spirit's anguish, growing stronger with each passing moment. Rose realized with growing horror that these were the souls of those who had harbored intense hatred during their earthly lives. As Rose observed their torment, she noticed a cruel irony in their predicament. The more these souls struggled to extinguish the flames, the stronger and more ferocious the fire became. Their attempts to quell the inferno only served to fuel it further, creating a vicious cycle of escalating agony. It was as if their own bitterness had taken on a life of its own, becoming a relentless, devouring force that consumed them from within. The scene before her served as a chilling metaphor for the destructive nature of hatred. Rose couldn't help but reflect on how unchecked negative emotions could eat away at a person's spirit, leading to a life filled with pain and suffering. Here, in this hellish realm, that symbolic destruction had become a literal, eternal torment. As Rose continued to witness this harrowing spectacle, she began to understand the profound consequences of allowing hatred to take root in one's heart. The flames that consumed these souls represented not just their past anger, but the missed opportunities for forgiveness, healing, and love. Each lick of fire seemed to whisper of the joy and peace these spirits had forsaken in favor of their all-consuming rage. The terrifying nature of this punishment struck Rose to her core. It was a stark reminder of how the emotions we nurture in life can shape our existence beyond death. The sight of these souls, forever burning in the fires of their own making, underscored the importance of confronting and releasing negative feelings before they could take hold and define one's entire being. As Rose's horror grew, she found herself being drawn deeper into the infernal landscape. The weight of what she had witnessed pressed heavily upon her spirit. Each new revelation in this journey through hell seemed to challenge her understanding of life, death, and the consequences of human actions in ways she could never have imagined. What other nightmarish scenes awaited her in the depths of this realm? Rose steeled herself for what was to come, knowing that her odyssey through this place of eternal torment was far from over. As Rose ventured further into the depths of this infernal realm, she encountered a sight that made her question the very nature of truth itself. What could be so heinous that it would force souls to endure an eternity of their own words? Before her, a group of tormented spirits appeared, their faces contorted in agony. Sharp, glowing instruments stretched their mouths into grotesque shapes, forcing them to remain perpetually open. Rose watched in horror as flames and acrid smoke poured from their gaping maws, a visual representation of the lies they had spoken in life. The true horror of their punishment became apparent as Rose observed the words themselves taking physical form. Each falsehood manifested as a tangible entity, razor-sharp and gleaming with malice. As these lies were forcibly expelled from the soul's mouths, they cut and scraped their way out, leaving invisible wounds that seemed to cause excruciating pain. But the torment didn't end there. Rose watched, transfixed, as each lie, once expelled, was inexorably drawn back into the mouth from which it came. The souls choked and gasped, unable to escape the cycle of their own deceptions. This endless loop of suffering served as a stark reminder of the consequences of living a life built on falsehoods. The scene before her brought to mind the psychological toll of chronic lying. Rose recalled hearing about studies that showed how frequent deception led to significant emotional distress, anxiety, and even physical health issues. Here, in this hellish realm, those consequences were made manifest in the most horrifying way imaginable. As she continued to witness this gruesome spectacle, Rose couldn't help but reflect on the teaching she had encountered in various spiritual traditions. The concept of karmic retribution came to mind, with each lie creating a debt that must be repaid through suffering. The Buddhist belief that dishonesty leads to negative consequences in future lives seemed to be playing out before her very eyes. The torment these souls endured spoke to a deeper truth about the nature of deception. Rose realized that lying was not just a betrayal of others, but a profound betrayal of oneself. Each falsehood these spirits had uttered in life had created a fracture in their own being, leading to this eternal cycle of self-inflicted pain. Overwhelmed by the relentless suffering around her, Rose felt a deep sense of despair. The weight of what she had witnessed pressed heavily upon her spirit, challenging everything she thought she understood about the consequences of human actions. As she turned away from this nightmarish scene, Rose couldn't shake the feeling that her journey through this realm of eternal torment was far from over. What other horrifying revelations awaited her in the depths of hell? Rose stumbled to the edge of a vast, desolate expanse, her spirit reeling from the horrors she had witnessed. Before her stretched a barren landscape, unlike anything she had encountered in the infernal realm thus far. The fiery torments and physical agonies were absent, replaced by something far more chilling. Scattered across the lifeless plain were countless souls, each one utterly and profoundly alone. The distance between them seemed insurmountable, an unbridgeable gulf of isolation that no cry or gesture could hope to cross. Rose felt an atmosphere of sorrow so deep it seemed to permeate the very air around her, weighing down on her spirit with an almost physical presence. As she observed these forsaken spirits, Rose sensed an emptiness within them that defied description. It was as if something vital had been torn away, leaving behind a void that could never be filled. Their eyes, devoid of hope or light, stared blankly into the distance, seeing nothing and everything at once. Rose realized with a start that these souls were experiencing a longing so profound it transcended mere emotion. They yearned for something they could no longer name or comprehend. The isolation these spirits endured felt more oppressive than any physical torment Rose had witnessed in hell. There were no chains, no fires, no instruments of torture, and yet the suffering was palpable. Rose recalled research she had once read about the psychological effects of extreme isolation, how it could lead to anxiety, depression, and a disconnect from reality. Here, In this desolate corner of the afterlife, those effects were magnified beyond imagining. Rose's gaze swept across the barren plain, taking in the silent agony of these lost souls. She understood now that this was the fate of those who had rejected all hope of redemption, who had turned away from every opportunity for connection and love. In life, they had chosen to isolate themselves from others, from hope, from the very concept of salvation. Now, in death, that choice had become their eternal reality. The profound sorrow that permeated this place mirrored the grief and loss these souls must have experienced in life. Rose thought of the countless missed opportunities for human connection, the relationships left to wither, the hands of friendship callously pushed away. Each soul stood as a testament to the terrible consequences of closing oneself off from the world and from the possibility of redemption. As Rose grappled with the weight of this revelation, she felt a subtle shift in the air around her. A faint glimmer of light pierced the oppressive darkness, catching her attention and drawing her gaze away from the desolate scene before her. It was a beacon of hope in this realm of despair, a promise that even in the depths of hell, light could still find a way to shine through. In a realm defined by absence and loss, something impossible was happening. A figure was taking shape within the growing radiance, its mere existence a paradox in this forsaken place. Rose's eyes widened as she realized who stood before her and why their presence here would change everything. A brilliant light cut through the oppressive darkness of hell, its intensity forcing Rose to shield her eyes. As her vision adjusted, she beheld a figure of pure radiance, its luminescence a stark contrast to the surrounding gloom. The darkness that had seemed so absolute moments ago now appeared feeble and insignificant in comparison to this unexpected presence. Rose's heart raced as recognition dawned upon her. The figure before her was none other than Jesus Christ himself. His appearance was both glorious and sorrowful, a divine paradox that spoke volumes about the nature of his presence in this infernal realm. The light emanating from him seemed to pulse with life and love, a beacon of hope in a place where such concepts had long been forgotten. As Jesus stood amidst the suffering souls, his eyes swept across the landscape of torment. Rose could see the depth of compassion in his gaze, a love so profound it seemed to transcend the very boundaries of this hellish domain. Each glance carried the weight of understanding, acknowledging the pain of every lost soul, while simultaneously offering a glimmer of redemption. The darkness of hell, once all-consuming, now appeared to shrink away from Jesus' radiance. Yet, curiously, his light did not banish the shadows entirely. Instead, it coexisted with the gloom, creating a surreal interplay of light and dark that Rose had never thought possible. This delicate balance seemed to underscore the complexity of divine justice and mercy. Rose found herself captivated by the unexpected juxtaposition of Christ's purity against the backdrop of eternal suffering. His presence here challenged everything she thought she understood about the afterlife and the nature of salvation. Questions raced through her mind. Why was Jesus in hell? Could redemption be possible even in this place of ultimate despair? As Rose grappled with these profound questions, she realized she was witnessing something truly extraordinary. The appearance of Jesus in hell was not just unexpected, it was a cosmic event that defied explanation. His very presence seemed to rewrite the rules of existence, offering a glimmer of hope where none should exist. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Jesus turned his gaze towards Rose. In that moment, she found herself face to face with the embodiment of divine love. The weight of his attention was both terrifying and exhilarating, a feeling that transcended mortal understanding. Rose knew with absolute certainty that this encounter would forever change her perception of life, death, and the nature of existence itself. Rose's heart raced as Jesus turned his gaze upon her. His eyes, deep pools of sorrow and love, seemed to pierce through her very being. The weight of his compassion was palpable, yet mixed with a hint of disappointment that made Rose's spirit ache. In this moment, suspended between realms, Rose felt the enormity of divine love wash over her. Without uttering a word, Jesus began to convey the true purpose of his sacrifice. It was as if a veil had been lifted from Rose's eyes, allowing her to see beyond the physical and into the spiritual realm. She began to understand the depth of his love, not just for her, but for all souls, even those trapped in this place of torment. As the revelation unfolded, the misconceptions Rose had held as a Muslim started to unravel. The rigid beliefs she had clung to for so long began to crumble in the face of this overwhelming display of divine compassion. Jesus showed her that salvation was not a prize to be earned through good deeds or religious devotion. Instead, it was a gift freely given, born from a love so profound it transcended human understanding. Rose felt a shift in her perception as she grappled with this new reality. The idea that salvation could be so simple, yet so transformative, challenged everything she thought she knew about faith and redemption. She realized that Jesus' sacrifice was not just a historical event, but a continuous offering of grace to all who would accept it. The profound nature of this realization left Rose breathless. She saw now that Jesus' love extended far beyond the boundaries of any single religion or belief system. It was a love that reached into the darkest corners of existence, offering hope even in this realm of despair. As Rose stood before Jesus in the depths of hell, the truth of salvation became startlingly clear. This unlikely place, shrouded in darkness and filled with torment, had become the backdrop for a divine revelation. Rose understood that the journey of faith was not about following a set of rules or performing rituals, but about opening one's heart to receive a love beyond measure. The transformative power of this encounter left Rose forever changed. She had come face to face with the embodiment of divine love, and in doing so, discovered a truth that would reshape her understanding of life, death, and eternity. As the scene began to shift around her, Rose knew that this profound realization about Jesus' love was just the beginning of a much larger spiritual awakening. In the depths of hell, a profound revelation unfolded before Rose's eyes. Jesus began to convey a message that would challenge everything she had ever believed about salvation. The truth he revealed was both stunningly simple and deeply transformative. As Rose listened, she realized that salvation was not about following strict religious paths or performing elaborate rituals. Jesus showed her that his sacrifice on the cross was complete and final, requiring nothing more from humanity than acceptance of this gift. This concept stood in stark contrast to Rose's former Muslim beliefs, which emphasized the importance of good deeds and adherence to specific practices to earn God's favor. Rose struggled to reconcile this new understanding with her past. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of a lifetime of teachings that now seemed to crumble in the face of this divine revelation. How could salvation be so simple? Where did all the rules and regulations she had followed fit into this new paradigm? As if sensing her inner turmoil, Jesus gently guided Rose to a deeper understanding. He showed her that his sacrifice was an act of pure love, freely given to all who would receive it. The simplicity of this truth began to dawn on Rose, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. Rose realized that this message of grace could be easily misunderstood or overlooked. In a world that often values complexity and human effort, the idea of a free gift of salvation might seem too good to be true. She saw how people, just like herself, could spend their entire lives striving to earn what was already freely offered. The crucial difference between earning and receiving grace became clear to Rose. Earning implied a transaction, a debt to be paid. Receiving, on the other hand, was an act of humility and trust. It required acknowledging one's own inability to bridge the gap between humanity and the divine, and accepting the loving hand extended by God Himself. As this truth settled into Rose's heart, she began to see Jesus in a new light. No longer was He just a prophet or a great teacher, as she had once believed. Now she recognized Him as the Savior, the one who had willingly paid the ultimate price to offer this incomprehensible gift of grace to all of humanity. The scene around Rose began to shift once more, but the profound impact of this revelation remained. She had entered hell, clinging to her old beliefs, but now found herself transformed by a truth both simpler and more profound than she could have ever imagined. As Rose prepared to face whatever came next in this extraordinary journey, she knew that her understanding of faith, salvation, and the very nature of divine love had been forever altered. Rose's journey through hell had already shaken the foundations of her beliefs, but what Jesus revealed next would transform her understanding of divine love entirely. As she stood before Him, bathed in His radiant presence, Jesus began to unveil the true heart of His mission. The love that emanated from Jesus was unlike anything Rose had ever experienced. It transcended all human divisions and boundaries, reaching far beyond the confines of any single faith or culture. Rose felt the weight of His compassion for every soul, regardless of their background or beliefs. This universal love challenged everything she had been taught about religious exclusivity. As Jesus continued to communicate with Rose, she felt the depth of His longing for all souls, especially those who had not yet recognized Him as their Savior. The intensity of His desire for unity among all people was overwhelming. Rose realized that the divisions she had once accepted as inevitable between Muslims and Christians, believers and non-believers, were meaningless in the face of this all-encompassing love. With gentle insistence, Jesus showed Rose that His invitation was truly open to everyone. This included Muslims, the very people she had once believed were excluded from Christ's salvation. The realization that Jesus' love extended even to those who had rejected or misunderstood Him was profoundly moving. Rose began to see that the barriers between faiths were human constructions, not divine mandates. As this truth settled into Rose's heart, the limitless nature of Jesus' love became overwhelmingly clear. It was a love that knew no bounds, that sought out the lost and the broken with relentless compassion. Rose understood that this love was not just a feeling, but an active force that could transform lives and bridge the deepest of divides. Jesus then imparted an urgent message for believers on earth. He emphasized the critical role they played in sharing this all-encompassing love with the world. Rose felt the weight of this responsibility settling upon her. She realized that those who had experienced Christ's love were called to be beacons of hope and unity in a fractured world. As the scene began to shift once more, Rose found herself grappling with the implications of what she had learned. She understood that her role in this divine plan extended far beyond her own salvation. The revelation of Christ's boundless love had ignited a spark within her, a desire to share this transformative truth with others. Rose's journey through hell had led her to the very heart of Christ's mission. She had witnessed the depth of divine love and understood its power to unite all of humanity. As she prepared to face whatever came next in her extraordinary experience, Rose knew that her purpose had been forever altered. The truth she had encountered in the depths of hell would become a message of hope and unity for the world above. As the weight of Jesus' revelations settled upon Rose, she sensed there was still more to come. What final message would Christ impart, and how would it reshape her understanding of a believer's true calling? Jesus turned his gaze back to Rose, his eyes filled with an urgency that sent a shiver through her spirit. He began to speak of a sacred duty, a calling that extended far beyond personal salvation. With gentle yet powerful words, Jesus urged those who knew him to stand in the gap for others, to become intercessors in a world desperately in need of divine intervention. As Rose listened, she felt the weight of responsibility settling upon her shoulders. This wasn't just about her own spiritual journey anymore. Jesus was revealing a crucial role that all believers were meant to play in his divine plan. The magnitude of this calling left Rose breathless, her mind reeling with the implications. Christ emphasized the extraordinary power of compassionate, fervent prayer. He showed Rose how the earnest supplications of his followers could pierce through the spiritual realm, creating pathways of grace for those still lost in darkness. It was a staggering revelation. The idea that human prayers could partner with divine will to bring about transformation and redemption. Jesus' words painted a picture of a spiritual battlefield, where believers were called to intercede for those still searching or lost. Rose saw visions of countless souls teetering on the brink of eternity, their fates hanging in the balance. She understood now that prayer was not a passive act, but a powerful weapon in the hands of those who truly believed. As this truth unfolded before her, Rose realized that the journey of faith was never meant to be walked alone. Jesus was calling his followers to form a united front, a community of believers whose collective prayers could shake the very foundations of hell itself. It was a sobering reminder of the interconnectedness of all souls and the responsibility each believer bore for their fellow human beings. The scene began to fade, signaling that Rose's time in this otherworldly realm was coming to an end. But before the vision dissipated completely, Jesus imparted one final, crucial warning. Rose understood that her story held a message of utmost importance for those still living. It was a call to action, a plea for believers to awaken to their true purpose and power as intercessors in a world hanging in the balance. As the last echoes of Jesus' words reverberated through her being, Rose felt herself being drawn back towards the realm of the living. The weight of her experience in hell and the profound revelations she had received would forever alter the course of her life. She knew that her journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The veil between worlds began to thin, and Rose found herself caught in a liminal space. What would await her on the other side of consciousness? And how would she reconcile the profound truths she had witnessed with the reality of her earthly existence? As Rose felt herself being pulled back through the darkness, the sights and sounds of hell began to fade away like a distant dream. The oppressive heat and the cries of tormented souls grew fainter, replaced by a growing awareness of her physical body. Yet as the infernal realm receded, Rose struggled desperately to hold on to the profound revelations she had received. The transition back to life was not smooth or instantaneous. Rose's spirit seemed to hover between two worlds, caught in a moment of suspended animation. She could sense the pull of her mortal form, but the weight of her otherworldly experience still clung to her like a heavy shroud. In this in-between state, Rose grappled with the enormity of what she had witnessed and learned. Gradually, the familiar sounds of the hospital began to penetrate Rose's consciousness. The rhythmic beeping of medical equipment grew louder, anchoring her to the physical realm. With each electronic pulse, Rose felt herself being drawn further away from the spiritual truths she had encountered. She yearned to stay in that place of divine understanding, fearing that the mundane world would dull the sharp clarity of her revelations. As Rose's awareness of her surroundings increased, she became cognizant of a flurry of activity around her. Voices, muffled at first but growing clearer, reached her ears. She could sense the presence of others, concerned family members and focused medical staff, though she had yet to open her eyes. The contrast between the solemnity of her spiritual journey and the urgent energy of the hospital room was jarring. With a mixture of reluctance and inevitability, Rose finally opened her eyes. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room assaulted her senses, a stark departure from the otherworldly glow she had experienced in the presence of Jesus. As her vision cleared, she found herself surrounded by the anxious faces of her loved ones and the professional concern of the medical team. The realization that she had returned to her physical body hit Rose with the force of a tidal wave. She had journeyed to the depths of hell, stood in the presence of Christ himself, and received divine revelations. Yet here she was, lying in a hospital bed as if nothing had happened. The dichotomy between her profound spiritual experience and the mundane reality of her current situation was almost too much to bear. As Rose's near-death experience came to an end, she knew that her true journey was only beginning. The weight of the truths she had learned and the responsibility she now carried settled upon her like a mantle. Rose understood that she must now confront her new reality and purpose, forever changed by her encounter with the divine. How would she integrate these profound spiritual insights into her everyday life? And how could she fulfill the sacred duty of sharing Christ's message of universal love and redemption with a world that might not be ready to hear it? Imagine waking up with a truth so powerful it threatens to shatter everything you once believed. For Rose, this wasn't just imagination, it was her new reality. As she lay in her hospital bed, still reeling from her encounter with Jesus in hell, a question burned in her mind. Could the love she witnessed in the afterlife truly transform her life on earth? The answer would challenge not just her faith, but her very identity. Rose grappled with the weight of her experience in hell, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and beliefs. The vivid memories of the tormented souls, the searing heat, and the profound darkness contrasted sharply with the radiant presence of Jesus she had encountered. How could she reconcile these otherworldly visions with the mundane reality of her hospital room? As Rose began to process her near-death experience, she felt an overwhelming urgency to share the message of Jesus' love. The compassion and grace she had witnessed in the depths of hell had shaken her to her core, challenging everything she had previously believed as a Muslim. The simplicity of salvation through Christ's sacrifice stood in stark contrast to the rigid religious practices she had once followed. With each passing day, Rose's perspective on life and faith underwent a profound transformation. She began to see her survival not as mere chance, but as a divine purpose. The realization that she had been given a second chance, not just at life, but at understanding the true nature of God's love, filled her with a sense of responsibility and awe. Rose's journey from Muslim to Christian took on new significance in light of her extraordinary experience. She understood now that her conversion wasn't just a change of religious affiliation, but a fundamental shift in her understanding of the divine. The Jesus she had encountered in hell wasn't bound by human religious divisions. His love transcended all barriers, reaching out to every soul with equal fervor. As Rose reflected on her encounter with Jesus in the depths of hell, she felt a profound shift in her purpose. No longer was she content to simply live out her faith in private. She felt called to become a bridge between different faiths, to share the message of Christ's universal love with those who, like her former self, might have misunderstood or rejected it. The impact of Rose's experience reverberated through every aspect of her life. Her relationships, her priorities, and her understanding of the world around her were all filtered through the lens of her newfound faith. She saw now that her survival and her extraordinary journey through hell were not just personal experiences, but a testament to the transformative power of divine love. As Rose prepared to leave the hospital and re-enter the world, she knew that nothing would ever be the same. The woman who had entered hell as a questioning ex-Muslim emerged as a passionate follower of Christ, carrying a message of hope and redemption for all who would listen. Her life had been transformed, and now she was determined to be an agent of transformation for others. Rose Mahmad's extraordinary journey through the depths of hell and her encounter with Jesus Christ challenge our fundamental understanding of faith, redemption, and the afterlife. Her account bridges the chasm between different religious traditions, offering a message of hope and love that transcends boundaries we often consider insurmountable. The vivid details of her experience, from the torments of the damned to the radiant presence of Jesus, paint a picture of divine love that is both awe-inspiring and deeply unsettling. As we contemplate Rose's story, we're forced to confront our own beliefs about life, death, and the nature of divine love. Could the compassion and grace she witnessed in the unlikeliest of places reshape our understanding of salvation? Her account invites us to look beyond the confines of our own religious backgrounds and consider a love so vast it reaches into the darkest corners of existence. How might this perspective change the way we treat others, regardless of their faith or lack thereof? Rose's transformation from a questioning ex-Muslim to a passionate follower of Christ serves as a powerful testament to the life-altering potential of such encounters. Her story leaves us with a profound question. If divine love can penetrate even the depths of hell, how might it transform our own lives and the world around us?